The countdown is on to Dynasty Decisions episode 100. If you guys look at your screen, we have Danny with a new camera here. Dynasty Decisions episode 92, the debut episode of Danny having a functional camera. It is a great time to be alive. Great time for us to talk about some trades. Great time for us to talk about, rebuilding, contending questions, who should I go after? All that stuff is what we cover on this channel in Dynasty Decisions. Of course, if you want your team featured, go down to the link in the description, fill out the Google form. If you're a site subscriber at Flock Fantasy using our promo code specifically, promo code FSE, you will skip the line. If not, you can join the queue and wait your turn. So, Danny, how you doing? How you liking the new camera?
Doing well. And yeah, you guys get a cleaner look at this cute face you see on the screen. Obviously, you got a nice look at Corey's face for the longest time, but it was time to upgrade from that webcam. It was time to upgrade from my Logitech. Get the camera in hand right now. End up sending it up today. So yeah, let's waste no more time. Let's get right into the video.
All right, so let's start it off with a classic Dynasty Decisions submitter. Probably between Chan Hughes and Daniel Kraus, I think these two guys probably have the title for most submissions, maybe AJ up there as well. Daniel submitting his team here. You guys can see it on the screen. It's a 12-team PPR, 4-point per passing touchdown, superflex league. Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts at quarterback, pretty set there, I would say. Jahmyr Gibbs is his main running back. Tyreek, CeeDee Lamb, Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Devontae Smith, Sky Moore, and others at wide receiver. Mark Andrews and Cole Kmet as his main tight ends. Looks like he spent his 106 on Jahmyr Gibbs this past rookie class, and he does have 4 first-rounders, including one projected early in next year's class as well. So, I mean, looking at this team, you got a pretty strong shell. He said he's feels set to compete besides running back. He said would now be the time that you'd go after that because he has all that buying power with those 2024 firsts. He said, I think my team is telling me it's time to compete, but I could be overconfident. He said only really one other team that he could that could compete with him. That he feels like. So he said, if that's the case, if we agree with that, assessment that he's made with his team, who are some good running backs to buy, what pieces should he move? And then who should he buy? He said, also, do I need a quarterback 3 or just kind of wait to see if he can get one with the 2024 first? Obviously, you don't anticipate sitting Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts on any given week. And those guys are going to give you massive advantages at their position. And then we'll get into his other question. So what are your thoughts on, is his team telling him, hey, the time is now, it's ready to compete? Or are you going to be a little bit more patient with this one potentially?
I agree with his assessment here. I would definitely say try to be cost wary when you're buying these running backs because you don't really need like true difference makers. I would say, but like try to get like maybe a hammer, but like your difference makers are going to come at your quarterback position. Your difference maker is going to come hopefully at Jahmyr Gibbs at your main running back 1 position. Your wide receivers are clearly fucking set up to compete. Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Devontae Smith, etc. there. And you have a needle mover at tight end. So realistically, if you can get potentially even, would you say one of those late firsts or try to get like a 2-for-1 maybe? Like, would you go after, let's say, Cam Akers and Joe Mixon and see if it costs like one of those late firsts and maybe a second?
Yeah, I mean, it's really all going to depend on the price point. I would say go after the teams in your league that might be stuck in limbo, that might be trying to tear it down.
Yeah,
Maybe they have Ramondre Stevenson on their roster and all it
that
costs
too.
you is a late first. Or maybe they have J.K. Dobbins and James Conner on their roster and you can get that for a first and a third or something like that. So,
Agreed.
I mean, it really all depends on what the cost is. You could go after really any running back that you want here. I don't know if I'd be going out and buying like Austin Eckler or somebody who's more aging. I'd probably want somebody that gives me like a 2 to 3 year window at the running back position. So, Jonathan Taylor right now, cost depressed right now because he's holding out. Maybe you can go after him and all it costs you is like a first and a second, given that he's holding out. And some people might be worried about that. As far as like what running backs I think are like currently undervalued on the market, I think a guy like Ramondre Stevenson, Dameon Pierce, Saquon Barkley, Travis Etienne, potentially maybe Josh Jacobs if somebody's worried about his contract situation. Those would be the types of running backs that I would go after in this situation. But you also, like Danny said, could go after cost-effective guys because you're in a situation where your quarterbacks are clearly the best in you. There's no way that anybody has better quarterbacks than you. There's no way that anybody has a better receiver core. I mean, Hill, Lamb, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Smith are all top 14 receivers for me in redraft this year, with a lot of those guys being inside my top 10. And Mark Andrews, my tight end too. And I think he's, comparable to Travis Kelce, at least at cost right now. So I would definitely be looking any and all directions with the running back position. Maybe you go after a hammer if the cost isn't there, if it's, these guys are overvaluing that position. Maybe you just go after, like Danny said, a Cam Akers or a Damian Pierce or somebody kind of in the middle, or a J.K. Dobbins, or you go really cheap and you go after like James Conner and, guys like that.
Yeah, agreed. Like when you're talking about the cheap options, you're looking at like James Conner, Aaron Jones, like Joe Mixon, maybe Cam Akers, like we said. If you want somebody that could have a depressed market that you might be able to get attained, this would kind of figure into the 1 year type of mindset. But given his cost, I feel like he's a needle moving piece potentially. That's going to be super cheap. See if you can get something on top of Derrick Henry maybe for that late one too. I think is a very suitable option because, like we kind of mentioned, although we're lower on Derrick Henry from a pure macro seasonal standpoint, his seasonal cost is in the early round 3 portion. If he's still giving you 16, 17 points per game, like that's going to be a win for you because of the cost you paid in Dynasty versus being a loss for you if you spent that as an early 3rd round pick in redraft. So for us, like Derrick Henry, again, if you can get him 8th round type of startup costs, I think I'd be willing to pull the trigger on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing for Daniel is that he's a Mother Flocker member, so he has access to our trade value chart. So look at what we have them listed at, and if you can get them for less than that, then obviously they're a good trade target. Maybe that's Christian McCaffrey, all it costs you is a mid-first rounder, go after Christian McCaffrey. Maybe it's J.K. Dobbins, all it costs you is a late first rounder plus J.K. Dobbins in a second or J.K. Dobbins in another piece, then go after him. It really all is going to depend on the price point. He also says, weird question, somewhat macro-based, but is it possible to just compete without a lot of running back production? So I will say, yeah, in your situation, when you have a positional advantage at quarterback, at tight end, and at wide receiver, then yeah, it is possible that you probably would still, though, need at least, Antonio Gibson, AJ Dillon types to fill out your roster. You can't compete with just Jahmyr Gibbs on this team, but I will say you don't need to go after Jonathan Taylor. You don't need to go after an absolute hammer. You could get by with just some zero RB type of options behind Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yep, I agree there. And of course, like you still have some potential pieces that can gain value this offseason. Like hypothetically, if Sky Moore looks like a baller and his ADP now is all of a sudden as a round 6 startup type of pick because he looks like he can potentially be Mahomes 1. If you can translate that straight up for running back production at that point, that'd be a suitable piece. Again, if Sky Moore is going like I said, round 6, maybe early round 7 to startups, which I think is a plausible scenario given like he's a round 9 pick right now and there's already glowing reports. If that comes to fruition, maybe straight up he can get you Nick Chubb. I wouldn't be shocked in a more running back depressed market if by the end of August, Sky Moore could potentially be used in a package to get a guy like Nick Chubb.
Yeah, or maybe even just like a riskier asset like J.K. Dobbins or Cam Akers or somebody like that. So yeah, let's rattle off these trades real quick, and then we'll move on to the next team. So let's go from April 11th was the first one that he traded. So pre-NFL draft, he traded Javonte Williams in the 111, which became Dalton Kincaid for Drake London. Now, unfortunately for you, both of those assets have kind of accumulated some value, with Javonte getting a little bit healthier, Dalton Kincaid obviously being a little bit more valuable than he was pre-draft. But I will say Drake London is a much better asset than both of those guys combined still, in my opinion. So I definitely love that trade for you. Then you sent away the 302 for Leonard Fournette. I think in your situation, looking for some zero RB running back pieces, that's not a terrible trade. Send an early 3rd rounder for a dart throw. Fournette definitely could sign somewhere. We're already seeing, the Seahawks deal with running back injuries. The Colts are dealing with running back injuries with Zach Moss going down. We're seeing Ronald Jones got suspended for 2 games. Maybe Fournette ends up in Dallas or something like that. There's definitely going to be landing spots for a guy like him. So I think getting him now, you could even potentially just flip him for more later. I think for your team, you probably use that production, but not a bad trade overall. And then the final trade here, which it looks like happened about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, you sold Dak Prescott, DK Metcalf, Cade Otton, your own 2024 first. So it looks like all of those ones, none of them are yours by the looks of it. And then you're also your own 2025 one. And you bought some hammers with Jalen Hurts and Mark Andrews.
Yeah, no, I agree. Now you'd argue, okay, 2 1s, Metcalf, Prescott, that's a big package. But like Corey kind of said, like we're looking at your team right now. Literally, you get one more running back. Your 24 and 25 one, based on how you've structured this thing, should be in that 109 to 112 range. If this was a potential 105, 106 type of pick with your first rounders in the 24 and 2025 class, I would be a little bit more wary. But because seeing your team, I would be heavily shocked if this team didn't make the playoffs each of the next 2 years. And if that's the case, you're a playoff contender. Jalen Hurts gets you over the edge because as much as I love Dak Prescott, he's probably capped at about a 21, 22, maybe if he runs extremely hot on touchdowns type of ceiling. With Jalen Hurts, we saw a 25 point per game ceiling last year because he has such such an ability to score with his legs. I mean, 13 rushing touchdowns last year, over 700 rushing yards. Even if he doesn't develop into this 30 passing touchdown quarterback, like, he's going to be an elite needle mover in fantasy. He's already got that long-term contract in Philadelphia. So again, as much as I love my Dallas Cowboy, and I think real life, like, they're fucking comparable, and dynasty and fantasy, it's really not close given the advantage that Hurts brings with his legs. So
yeah, I mean, they're not close in real life, so don't kid yourself.
Relax
But
there.
Jalen Hurts, for me, Prescott, Metcalf, and a late 2024 first. I don't even know if that's enough for Hurts by himself, to be honest. So the other the other late first for Mark Andrews, also not enough for him, in my opinion. So I really love that side of the deal for you. You've built out a very strong team. You're ready to compete. Again, go after some cost-effective running back production potentially, or go after a hammer. Really all depends where the price point is at. But we can move on to the next team here, which is from Alex N. He said he has all of his picks right now, and he feels like he should sit on his hands, as this league has been pretty inactive since the startup draft a month ago. So this is the team here. It's a 14-team start 8. So shallow starting roster, but it is a 14-teamer. It is a super flex as well, PPR league. And then also 4-point per passing touchdown. Having Watson and Richardson's definitely helpful in a 14-team super flex. Travis Etienne, James Cook, Damian Harris, Antonio Gibson, kind of like a hero RB there. Drake London, Christian Watson, Michael Pittman, and company at wide receiver. Greg Dulcich, David Njoku mainly at tight end. Does not have any 2023 picks. Looks like they've already been spent because the startup draft was recently. And then 2024, it looks like he has all of his picks plus an additional third rounder. So looking at this team, what are your thoughts? In a 14-teamer, you got to, again, keep in mind that, rosters probably won't be extremely, extremely strong. My thoughts are you have the makings of like a 1-year punt. And in that case, I'm probably looking to maybe move off of Travis Etienne either now or potentially in season.
Yeah, I would agree with you as well. You have obviously a very strong hold at quarterback. You have a potential difference maker or duo at tight end there with Njoku and Dulcich in particular. And then you have good numbers, I would say, at wide receiver, at least at the top, for a 14-team league. The problem that I kind of have is that in your flex positions, like outside of maybe Travis Etienne this year, you don't really have a, complete hammer. You don't have a wide receiver 4 potential finish. You don't have a, outside of Travis Etienne, running back 8 or 9 type of finish within the team. So like Corey kind of said, if you can potentially transition this into a 1-year punt, maybe get a couple picks on top, whether it's a first and second or regardless of what basically what your league market kind of depict, that's kind of the route I would take. Again, you just drafted this startup. It is a start 8. So maybe you try to swing a move for a hammer, maybe Christian Watson, you add a 2 and it gets you Stephon Diggs. And at that point, you're kind of evaluating, hey, my team with Stephon Diggs, maybe it has a chance. I fully just think, like you kind of outlined here, there's no real pure studly team. There's 3 contenders. It just really depends on how you can convert your team to compete with those 3 contenders. Do you think if you make some moves, you can realistically be up there with them? Or do you think if you make some moves, you're going to be the clear 4? Because if you're going to be the clear 4, like Corey said, just 1-year punt this thing, regain for next year and completely hammer it out then. But right now, I feel like you have a lot of flexibility. It just kind of depends on what your league market kind of takes you.
Yeah, I mean, his sentiment here when he says no one has accumulated picks or intends to tank, that means you should be the first one to do it, in my opinion. Because if nobody's doing it, it means that everybody's trying to compete. And while this team is pretty solid, and you said there's only 3 real contenders, there's a good chance that, some things don't bounce your way, you suffer some injuries, whatever,
Agreed.
and then you're in a bad spot this time next year. So what you want to do is be proactive. Come, preseason games or come training camp or come, into the actual season, maybe you move off of Travis Etienne. Maybe he nets you a first and a second to somebody who's like a middling team trying to go after a win this year. And maybe that ends up being like the 107 and the 207 for Travis Etienne in the long term. I think if I was in your position, I would want more star power. I would want more depth for this team. Because other than your quarterbacks, really, you don't have a positional advantage anywhere. As much as I like Dulcich and Njoku and London and Watson and Pittman, those guys are all great assets. I just don't think that any of them are going to really, really hammer move the needle for you. So Travis Etienne is the like most sell-worthy running back on your team. But same goes for, James Cook, Damian Harris, Antonio Gibson, any of those guys work into a big workload. If Damian Harris is like scoring, 6 touchdowns over the first 8 games of the season, you should probably sell him. If James Cook has maybe Damian Harris goes down with an injury, maybe he's like the lead back for a couple of weeks, you sell him. Same goes for Antonio Gibson if B-Rob misses any time or whatever. So for me, I would be proactive with this thing, churn the running back core. Nobody's tanking means that you have the ability to potentially get the first pick. And if you get the first pick, you can take Caleb Williams and add him to this quarterback core, maybe sell one of your quarterbacks as a result of that. or you can sell that pick for a king's ransom, move down, take Marvin Harrison, pick up additional first rounders on first rounders, and really build out a studly contender. Because as of right now, looks like you're kind of stuck in limbo with this team.
Agreed.
Looks like it's a team that is solid all around, but not really elite in any one area except for maybe quarterback. So for me, I'm definitely looking to be proactive with this thing and try and tear it down for a quick rebuild.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. Now that you made sense of what his micro market could look like with no teams fully contending to get a bunch of picks, or not contending, but fully stocking up on the picks, then yeah, you got to be the first one to do that in your league. You got to see the league market as more of a contending market and manipulate it to your best advantage. So go through some of these trades, and honestly, I'm looking through them, and I really like what you're able to do in terms of just converting assets and gaining more assets as a result. Trading Jahan Dotson, Chase Brown for Brandon Ayuk, and an early third-round pick. Pretty much a wash. I guess it really just kind of depends on your viewpoint of Dotson for Brandon Ayuk, because I would say Chase Brown's probably worth an early to mid type of third-round pick in 2024. So about reasonable there. If you like Brandon Ayuk, I like that deal. You're able to transition Brandon Ayuk, however, into Michael Pittman and Antonio Gibson. And now we're looking at it from a overall standpoint. You basically move Jahan Dotson and Chase Brown into Michael Pittman, Antonio Gibson, and a third-round pick. I really like you're able to do there. Although I prefer Jahan Dotson to Michael Pittman straight up, I would prefer Antonio Gibson to Chase Brown. And then you also get that squeeze of an early third-round pick, which could be a valuable piece with whether you want to parlay it into the future, whether you want to buy a contending asset maybe at the deadline next year, or during your rookie draft. You have a lot of options there. And then finally, this move, I mean, I don't really have to review it too hard. People are devaluing it probably because it's 2026 picks, but you could shave that mid third round pick projected in 2026 off this deal, and you can tell me an early second any year. It could be in 2036 for all I care for Tim Patrick and Jerome Ford. Tim Patrick with that injury yesterday towards Achilles, but we would have said the exact same thing before that happened, that you're moving to basically plotter, filler type of assets, and to one that could be a beneficial piece to your team. That 2026 early second round pick can get you well within, just look at this year. A guy like Zach Charbonnet, a guy like Devon A-Chain, a guy like Michael Mayer, a lot of like really solid top 10 overall round assets going in that early second round range. Tim Patrick and Jerome Ford, like, are they even making the top 20 rounds of startups?
Yeah, no, this trade specifically tells me that you shouldn't have any problem moving ETN, moving James Cook, moving Damian Harris, moving Antonio Gibson. If those guys have any stretch of time where they're overvalued in season, especially, I will say you should probably wait to be in season to move some of those guys because they are running backs. Sometimes people want to see the production before they invest into it. But yeah, stack up on 2024 picks, stack up on 2025 picks. You could really build this thing out into a monster by 2024, 2025 if you do this thing right. I probably wouldn't rush things and try and compete and that kind of thing, because if everybody in your league is zigging, trying to compete and win the championship, then you be the first one to zag like we talked about, and you could absolutely be in a really good spot with this team. So number 3 team is Bryan Harris. Again, another contender for most dynasty decision submissions of all time. He has his team listed here. It's a 12-team best ball PPR, half tight end premium, 6 point per passing touchdown, super flex league here. Justin Fields, Anthony Richardson, Kenny Pickett, Mac Jones, pretty strong quarterback core. Miles Sanders, AJ Dillon, Khalil Herbert, Elijah Mitchell, Sean Tucker, very like zero RB kind of core there. Wide receivers, Jalen Waddle, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Michael Pittman Jr., Terry McLaurin, Darnell Mooney, Josh Downs, Jacoby Myers, and others. And then mainly at tight end, just like Juwan Johnson and Darnell Washington, but he does have all of his future picks here. He said this is one of his most frustrating teams. He said he can't decide what he needs to do with it. What direction would we go with this squad and what moves to get him there? So what are your thoughts when you look at this team? You think this is one that you're trying to compete with? You're trying to maybe punt? What are you thinking?
Well, looking at it objectively, you clearly have a solid quarterback room, especially in a best ball. Justin Fields, Anthony Richardson are guys that I would love in managed leagues, but in best ball in particular, given their rushing ceilings, they have the ability to score 30, 35 points any given week. The rest of the quarterback room, I don't really think has like high spike week potential, but when you have those first two headlining it, you have an insane ceiling on any given week. So I like what you got there. Wide receivers objectively are a really strong room. Jalen Waddle, Amon-Ra St. Brown, both guys that are getting selected within the top 13 overall, top 12 overall redraft wide receivers right now, depending on where Jalen Waddle goes. So you're definitely strong there. Michael Pittman, Terry McLaurin, Darnell Mooney, Jacoby Myers, Josh Downs, are all guys to get excited for. Maybe Jalen Hyatt catches a long touchdown or two and makes your lineup, but not a guy that you're relying upon, but a guy that should have potentially a theoretical higher ceiling in best ball than in a managed league. And then in terms of tight ends, that is kind of where my main problem is I don't really feel like you have a guy that can contend. As much as I like Juwan Johnson, they brought in Foster Moreau. They still have Taysom Hill. I'm not exactly sure of what the log jam there is going to look like, but you don't really have a guy that I view as a top 12 set in type of guy. And I know Corey's going to touch upon this as well, because obviously you just finished up your tight end league winner series. You kind of need one of those guys to headline your groups if you want to truly contend. So whether that's, trading a second round pick for a guy that you feel like maybe older can get there production wise for you, like a Darren Waller, hypothetically, I feel like could complement your core as well. And same thing goes for running back in a best ball format. I'm more willing to have a barren group like this because Elijah Mitchell could figure in, Leonard Fournette could sign with the team. Khalil Herbert heading his rotation there, heading his committee over there in Chicago. AJ Dillon, Miles Sanders, etc. All kind of guys that profile to be better in best ball than managed. However, I will say you are lacking an anchor at running back, although you have, in my opinion, good numbers, like I said.
Yeah, this is a difficult team to evaluate, and I understand why you're frustrated with it, because if you added one hammer running back and even a David Njoku caliber tight end or better, you really could reasonably compete with this team, because you're going to have an advantage in numbers and in spike weeks, like we talked about at quarterback, and then same with your wide receivers. Those guys are all going to probably provide you some good performances. So, I mean, you have all your picks, you have all your buying power. I would definitely be curious to know, like, what is the market view in your league on like running back production? Because if you could go out and acquire Jonathan Taylor on the cheap right now because he's holding out, maybe you could do that. Maybe you could go out and acquire somebody different that's a little bit cheaper, maybe a J.K. Dobbins or a Ramondre Stevenson or somebody like that. And then if that guy also has an extra tight end on his team, maybe you can do a first and a second for J.K. Dobbins and David Njoku or something like that. And once you add those players to this team, then I really do think you should be a top 3-4 team in your league with like kind of a pseudo hero RB build, strong wide receiver core, strong quarterback core. It is underrated in a best ball format to have a lot of quarterbacks that have starting jobs and spike week potential. So even though Kenny Pickett and Mac Jones and even Sam Darnold are not guys that are like you want to rely on, they're going to give you 2 or 3 decent weeks where they throw 2 or 3 touchdowns, maybe run in a touchdown here and there. So yeah, I really do like the shell of this team. I would say it's all going to be dependent on your league market as what I would do with this. If people are overvaluing running backs in your league, then I would probably strip your running back core and try and rebuild this thing. But if it's, relatively even keel, people value market running back markets appropriately, then you should be able to go after a Ramondre, a J.K. Dobbins or something like that. And tight ends usually aren't that valuable in general on the market, but especially in best ball, I do think tight ends are a little underrated. Having like 3 or 4 solid tight ends on your roster can definitely help, elevate your scores on any given week in a best ball format. If you had, Pat Freiermuth and David Njoku and Juwan Johnson, then you're probably guaranteed to have a pretty solid tight end core. And I mean, we've talked about this from a best ball perspective in season long, that having 3 tight end cores can often be very beneficial. So I definitely don't hate the idea of going after a tight end as well.
Yeah, no, I agree there completely. And you mentioned the name David Njoku and J.K. Dobbins. I think that would be a perfect duo, even if that costs you year 1, 2, and 3, or maybe you have to throw in like, I don't know, like Jacoby Myers or something like that to get it done. I feel like transitioning some of your points to a hammer running back and a tight end that contribute week to week, like you kind of said, is going to be beneficial. And I'm glad that you made that point in terms of having usable tight ends in best ball. I feel like that is something that goes away from a lot of people, that especially at opportunity cost, you can get a lot of involved tight ends at super, super cheap cost, whether that's, a 3rd round pick for, I don't know, like a late
Tyler Conklin or Hayden Hurst or,
Jake
whoever.
Ferguson,
like Trey McBride might be, a 3rd round value in some of your leagues. Yeah, you can get some tight end production on the real cheap. So if you sent away a 1st and a 2nd for J.K. Dobbins and David Njoku, maybe all it costs you is another 3rd rounder to get somebody's Tyler Conklin and Hayden Hurst from the rest of his roster. And then at that point, you'd have a lot of strength in numbers at that position, and you'd be able to fill out your spots no problem, because obviously in a best ball format, you don't have to choose when to start these guys. They just put up their good weeks when they put up their good weeks.
Yep. No, 100% agree there. But I think we can move on to the next team and the first flocker of the video, and that's going to be from Chan Hughes. You guys can see the team on the screen here. You got a 12-team start 9 PPR league with a 0.5 wide receiver premium and a 1 point tight end premium. So this looks like actually like a tiered PPR system where half PPR to running backs, another half PPR, so a full PPR to wide receivers, and a 1.5 PPR to tight ends. So keep that in reference, that tight ends are going to be a lot more valued in this league, and wide receivers are going to be comparatively more valued than the running back position. But overall, looking at the squad, Dak Prescott, Anthony Richardson, Kyler Murray, Matthew Stafford, the quarterback core already is giving me goosebumps. Running back,
the rest of the team will too.
yeah,
So keep
my
going.
Lord. Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, Jonathan Taylor headlining your running backs. Garrett Wilson, JSN, Michael Pittman, Christian Watson, Jordan Addison, Deontay Johnson, Darren Waller, David Njoku, Dawson Knox, Tyler. Yeah, if that wasn't enough for your guy's eyes, he also has, just 3 first-round picks banked in 2024. Like, I feel sorry for whoever you did this to, because you got a squad here. He basically says going into year 3, productive struggle in the startup. I definitely have a house money year lined up. I think you might.
I think you're underrating your team, my man.
I think you have more than a house money. He says, but was wondering, since I have these running backs, if I should be aggressive with picks, younger assets to make a move for this year. I don't even have to read the rest of it. You should be making a move this year, whether it's converting a Christian Watson into a Stephon Diggs, whether it's converting Michael Pittman into Devontae Adams, whether it's converting those are the 2 mains that
Dak
stuck out
Prescott
to me.
into Joe Burrow. Like,
yeah,
dude, you have
Darren Waller.
You have the assets on your team in production and in value, and you also have 3 extra firsts this year. So if you wanted to take Dak Prescott plus, a first-round pick and throw in Khalil Herbert also, who cares, and go after a better quarterback, or you want to do that with Kyler Murray, you want to do that with Anthony Richardson, or you want to, like you said, transition Michael Pittman into Devontae Adams or to Cooper Kupp or somebody that's going to give you a little bit more point production. You are at a point with this team that you can sacrifice value. You can lose trades. Who cares? Your team, you have my top 3 dynasty running backs on your team. Bijan, Breece Hall, Jonathan Taylor. Those are my top 3 dynasty running backs. You have Garrett Wilson, JSN, Jordan Addison, Christian Watson, Michael Pittman. All those guys are like top 24 dynasty wide receivers. You have a very solid tight end production. Darren Waller, David Njoku. You could upgrade at that position if you want. You want to take David Njoku in a first-round pick, go after Mark Andrews or something like that. Go ahead. Like, you're in a position where you can lose trades. This is the best position to be in dynasty.
JSM plus a first gets you a fucking CD Lamb. Go make that move. You know what I mean? Like, you're at a point right now. Not to mention, you also have pieces where if you need to consolidate later, you can. You need to liquidate later, you can. You have Matthew Stafford, Khalil Herbert, J.K. Dobbins, Roschon Johnson, fucking Deontay Johnson, Jaden Reed. You have a lot of just like fillers on your team that would provide depth to other teams. But because you have so many fucking names on your team, they're probably never going to make your lineup. So if you can either, like I said, consolidate that down and get real point production upside there, or just liquidate. If you want to turn, again, Khalil Herbert, Matthew Stafford, J.K. Dobbins, all those guys into future picks and then use said picks to consolidate from there, you have the opportunity for it. You're super flexible right now where basically cracking down the numbers of this team into, like, again, in a start 9 format, 15, 16 guys that you can rotate in and out. You have way more than that right now. You basically have a team that I would expect to see in like a start 13 league as a contender, like where you need the depth and you need to cycle guys in and out. In a start 9, man, just fucking narrow that down and go for hammers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If somebody wants Jordan Addison, Deontay Johnson, and J.K. Dobbins for CeeDee Lamb or like a high-end wide receiver, just give them all the fodder or all the and these pieces aren't bad. Obviously, they're great pieces still, but you're at a position where you're looking for wins over replacement type of players. And those are the types of guys that I would be buying with this team. You're probably fine at running back because you literally can't get any better than the 3 that you have. And then at wide receiver, I mean, JSN has a lot of market value. Michael Pittman will be valuable on the market. Christian Watson, Jordan Addison, those guys will be valuable on the market. And there's better players that you can go after with those guys. Go Christian Watson and Josh Downs and Roschon Johnson in a second for, I don't know, AJ Brown or something like that. Like, go after the guys that are going to make a real difference in your starting lineup, because those are the type of guys that'll help you win a championship. This is not a house money team. This is a contender. So definitely, like Danny said, consolidate some assets, lose some trades, go out and lose some trades, get some good players as a result of the depth that you've been able to build. Yeah, absolutely. So I don't think we need to beat Chan Hughes' team to death anymore because I think he knows his team is good.
Yeah.
Before we get into the remaining teams of the video, we need to hear a word from our sponsors over at Aura. I want to take a few moments to tell you guys about Aura, who is the sponsor of today's video. Nowadays, anybody can find anything on the internet. If you guys try Googling your name and see what comes up, you'll be shocked at how much information is out there. You can probably find your email address, your name, your phone number, and other private information that you did not think was exposed on the internet. And this information is accessible because of data brokers who profit by selling your information to robocallers, advertisers, telemarketers, whoever else that wants to learn more about you. I'm sure you guys have received telemarketing phone calls and texts and spam and that kind of stuff. It's incredibly frustrating, and that is where Aura can come in. Aura will identify these data brokers that are exposing your information and automatically submit opt-out requests on your behalf. And right now you can use my link, aura.com/fantasy stock exchange, to try 2 weeks for free and see how many data brokers are selling your information. Also linked down below in the description, or you can scan the QR code that you see on your screen. But that is just one thing that Aura can do for you. Aura is an all-in-one cybersecurity protection app. It has a VPN for safe browsing. It has a password manager, has real-time credit and identity theft monitoring, including 24-hour US-based call centers that, if you ever have an issue, are very easy to get resolved. Internet parental controls if you guys have kids, and protects your devices from malware as well. If you guys are only using like one password or two passwords or a couple of passwords for everything, this next feature is definitely something for you. It also monitors your emails. It also monitors your passwords to see if they were involved in a data breach, exposed on the dark web, and gives you recommendations on which passwords you need to change and what to do going forward. Aura is really easy to set up, and it has everything that you need to stay safe on the internet. You don't have to download a VPN app to get a VPN. You don't have to download a password protector. It has everything you need all inside one affordable price. Let Aura do the hard work of keeping you safe online. If you sign up right now, Aura will give you a 2-week free trial if you use my link down below in the description or in the pinned comment of this video. Aura.com/fantasy stock exchange. Start your free 2-week trial today and protect your family's online cybersecurity habits. All right, we're back. Big shout out to Aura for sponsoring this video. We are going to break down Sammy's team here. 12-team PPR, 6-point per passing touchdown, half-point tight end premium, superflex league. Another Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts team of the video, which is insane. Travis Etienne and company at running back, wide receivers Debo, Mike Williams, Hollywood Brown, Mike Evans, Rashad Bateman, Tyler Lockett. Very deep at wide receiver. Not a ton of hammers there, though. At tight end, you got George Kittle, who obviously is a hammer, Greg Dulcich, Tucker Kraft, Hunter Henry, pretty good depth there. And then all of your future picks. So pretty well-balanced team, kind of a hero RB build. Obviously, the star of this team is going to be your quarterbacks, and, maybe ETN and Kittle can contribute star-level production, and then your wide receiver core. Really, all these guys have to do is just be 15-point per game scores, which I think is absolutely possible for Debo, for Mike Williams, for, Hollywood Brown and Mike Evans. Those guys get the volume to be able to do that. So you're in a really good spot, I would say, from a depth standpoint. I would consider maybe upgrading a wide receiver if you could. But at the same time, you're so strong at the other positions that it doesn't make a huge difference. I also would consider maybe getting a decent RB2, or at least a better RB2 than what you currently have. If you can get somebody that has RB1 capability, like a J.K. Dobbins, or potentially a Cam Akers, or a Damian Pierce, or a Ramondre Stevenson on the cheap, maybe all it costs you is, your first for J.K. Dobbins in a second, or your first for J.K. Dobbins in a third. I think I'd be willing to do something like that as well. We'll break down these trades here in a second, but what are your thoughts on this team?
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, start 10 league, you got some really solid depth, I would say, a wide receiver in particular. Running back's a little bit more of a mission, but you also do have a standout tight end core with George Kittle and Greg Dulcich, along with a few trades listed here. But like Corey said, we'll wait in a second to look at these trades. He does say that he did his first 3 startups this summer, and he felt like this one was his worst. I'll just say right off the bat, if these were your first 3 startups that you've ever done, and this is one you clarify as your worst, you did quite a good job, man. Honestly, like, you built out your wide receivers, you built out your quarterbacks, you traded running backs, you got your one anchor with Travis Etienne, but for the most part, went at cost there with guys like Penny, Algier, Foreman, Ezekiel Elliott, etc., Kenneth Gainwell there that could figure into your lineup, but realistically, even if they don't, they're such low cost that it's only an upside play if they even make your lineup. So definitely like how you built out this team, but I'll let it swing back to you with some of the trades here.
Yeah, so I mean, he said he recently did this startup. A lot of you guys ask, like, what's a good price to pay for Josh Allen in a startup? What's a good price to pay to go up and get Patrick Mahomes or some of these elite quarterbacks? This is a pretty good example, I would say, of what it should cost you to go up for Josh Allen. I don't want to say you got, raked over the coals, because this is probably what it needs to cost you. So it looks like you probably drew the 103 in your startup and you got Jalen Hurts, but you also wanted Josh Allen too. So you went up from your, 210 and your 310 and your 403. So you gave up basically your next 3 picks after Jalen Hurts for Josh Allen, the 911, which you spent on Rashad Bateman, and then the 1002 on Mike Evans. I think you got good value on those latter 2 picks, which is definitely helps this trade a little bit more. I mean, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think this is too much for Josh Allen? Jalen Waddle, Jonathan Taylor, and Jackson Smith and Jigba are the players that ended up becoming of that. Those are all great assets, but I'm assuming you're going to say that Josh Allen is better than them.
It's Josh Allen. You could add a first round pick to this and they would probably be fair. But for the most part, like, just give me the elite quarterback. And Josh Allen's a guy I view in that tier with Patrick Mahomes. When it comes to assets like that, it's really a gray area for what the cost should be. Because you want to say that, oh, this is what Josh Allen is worth. But when you're selling Josh Allen, you're not selling him for what it's worth. You're selling him for 1.2x, 1.3x the cost. Because realistically, given the point production, given the position he plays, given the youth, still only, I believe, 26, 27 when it comes to Josh Allen in the prime of his career, this is going to be a trade you look back on and say, yeah, at the time I was in a startup, I gave up a lot of my leverage in the early rounds, but you're going to look back at your startup 2 years later when maybe JSN doesn't fully become into that guy that you expected. Maybe Jonathan Taylor by then, 27-year-old running back, is looking like he's on an Ezekiel Elliott trajectory. And maybe Jalen Waddle, while he's a good back and wide receiver 1, never has that elite, wide receiver 3 overall ceiling in fantasy because of the presence of Tyreek Hill. You're going to look back and say, oh, but I got Josh Allen, so it's all good. I don't really care.
Yeah, I'll take my 25 points per game and be done with it. Yeah, like you could sell Josh Allen for 1.1, 1.2x what he's actually worth, and you're still not going to feel good about it because he's that good of a player. So I definitely, I understand the trade. I personally don't love going up for quarterbacks, but I think I would in this situation when I don't have to give up my like rookie first on top of like a bunch of great startup picks, and you're still able to build out. Yeah, there's a little bit of lacking star talent at the running back wide receiver position, but you still got an elite tight end. You already had, Jalen Hurts, obviously, when you made this trade. So definitely a pretty solid move there. It looks like he also traded up for Travis Etienne. He was sitting at the 603, goes up to the 508 to get Travis Etienne versus Nick Chubb. Again, I would much rather have Travis Etienne in Dynasty, given that you got like a 2 to 3 year shelf life with Travis Etienne, probably only like a 1 more year shelf life of RB1 production with Nick Chubb. And then all you really gave up was like late round pick swap. I would rather have Greg Dulcich than Trey Lance straight up, to be honest. And then Rashad Penny and Jaden Reed's pretty much a wash to me. So I think that was a pretty good move. I know you're a little bit higher on Trey Lance, but I still think that was a pretty solid move.
Yeah, no, I think it's a pretty solid move as a whole, but I definitely wouldn't take Dulcich over him straight up. But overall, though, I do like the trade. You got Travis Etienne, you got a younger back, and you got a back that realistically, the difference between him and Nick Chubb in terms of redraft this year isn't that crazy for me. Like Nick Chubb is more of like a mid-second round type of redraft pick. Travis Etienne's a guy that I'd be comfortable taking in that mid to late third round area. So while, obviously you'd prefer Nick Chubb this year, you're also getting the benefit that you're shaving a lot of mileage off of your running back from Nick Chubb to a guy like Travis Etienne.
Yeah, in a couple of years as well. Greg Dulcich, for what it's worth, it is a tight end premium. So you getting him in the 1205 spot is pretty insane. I think he would have been fine to go at that 1003 that you traded away in that spot there. So I would say looking at this team, again, you're lacking a little bit of star talent, but I think you're in a position where you could make a move here and there, go after a better running back, go after maybe an upgrade at wide receiver if you wanted to take, Mike Williams in a first and try and upgrade at that position. But overall, I think you're in a really good spot. I think you can probably compete house money or better with this team. Even though you said it was your worst startup, I still think you're in a pretty good spot. So let's move on to the three free submissions that we have of this video. We're going to try and motor through these because we don't want to keep you guys too long. Number 6 submission of the video we have here is from Matthew. He has his team listed here. I believe it is a 10-team PPR league lineup scoring, so not a best ball, 4 point per passing touchdown, super flex. He has Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, and Jared Goff and Sam Howell at quarterback. Again, is a 10-teamer. Javonte Williams, Dalvin Cook, James Conner, a couple other guys there at running back. Steph Diggs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Amari Cooper, Christian Kirk, Michael Pittman Jr., Gabe Davis, Elijah Moore, and others at wide receiver. And then Mark Andrews is his tight end. So when I'm looking at a 10-team league, in a super flex format, I want to be strong at the onesie slash, quarterback position. So having Josh Allen and Dak Prescott definitely helps. Those guys are probably, one of the best quarterback cores in your league. And then also having Mark Andrews in a 10-team league really, really helps you out as well. And then the rest of your team, I mean, your running back core is weak, obviously. Like, it's not going to be in a good spot. And if you want to compete, you may have to make a move at this position, I would say, because Javonte Williams being your only real hammer in a, position where Javonte Williams is coming off a multi-ligament ACL tear is not really something I would love for a competitive team. And the fact that you have Stephon Diggs and some aging wide receivers probably indicates to me that you want to try and compete with this team, not necessarily like punt it for one more year in house money, because we really don't know where Steph Diggs is going to be at this point in his career next year. I know he's, still obviously in his prime, but a 2 to 3 year window is absolutely at most what I'm willing to project for him. So what are your thoughts on this team? Do you think you'd make a move for a running back in this situation? He has all of his buying power. He has all of his future picks.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely wait to the season to do so because I do feel like, I mean, I guess you have Samaje Perine and Javonte Williams. So maybe Samaje Perine to start the year can like get you over the hump if Javonte Williams starts off to a cold start. And at that point, come week 4, week 5, because clearly your wide receivers, tight ends, and quarterbacks are ready. If your running backs are proving to be hitting their ceiling cases, maybe James Conner's the workhorse on Arizona despite the bad offense. Maybe, like you said, Samaje Perine gets off to a strong start, and then Javonte Williams, once he's fully healthy, fully takes over. And maybe Dalvin Cook lands in like Miami or New York or something, maybe punches in a couple touchdowns then. You'd also have the ability to just upgrade those guys flat out with their picks. So if they get off the strong starts, and you can attach a first to Dalvin Cook and somehow get, I want to say Jonathan Taylor, but could you get Jonathan Taylor at that point?
You could probably get ETN or somebody like that for that price. Yeah. Probably not Jonathan Taylor, though.
Maybe add a second or whatever to get Jonathan Taylor then.
Yeah, maybe something like that. Yeah, you definitely have some upside. I think one thing that sticks out to me is because it's a 10-team league, because you already have Josh Allen and Dak Prescott, and Jared Goff is coming off of a great season, and you have Sam Howell as your quarterback 3 currently, maybe you could downgrade your quarterback 3, quote unquote, from Jared Goff to Jimmy Garoppolo or Jared Goff to Ryan Tannehill or somebody like that, and pick up a running back in the process. So maybe it's Jared Goff for Ryan Tannehill and J.K. Dobbins, or Ryan Tannehill and even Cam Akers, Ryan Tannehill, Aaron Jones, or Derrick Henry, potentially, somebody like that. Yeah, you definitely have some upside, I think, to be able to maneuver because you're strong at quarterback. So that's something I definitely would consider as well, because how often is Jared Goff going to make your lineup with Josh Allen and Dak Prescott both healthy? Probably not very often. And I get it, you have a Monroe, so you kind of like the stack there. But for me, knowing that Jared Goff is a bit of a volatile asset, a win-now quarterback that, this time next year, would it shock any of us if, like, Jared Goff is not highly sought after in the Dynasty community? Maybe Hendon Hooker closes out the season because he's having a rough year. Like, it wouldn't totally shock me. I don't think Jared Goff is that bad, but I also don't think he's like value insulated for the next like 5 years either. He also has, he says this trade is maybe like in his inbox right now. He would send away his Elijah Moore for a 2024 second, likely early in DJ Chark. I think it's about fair market value. I personally view Elijah Moore a little bit higher than this, so I would probably hold, and maybe you'll be able to get more for Elijah Moore later, or maybe he works into your lineup more if he's having a breakout season.
The reason why I'd be willing to take this is right on the precipice of what I would want for Elijah Moore, give or take. Maybe it's a late 1, early 2, give or take. DJ Chark can give you some depth there. The reason why I would do this is because I feel like if you're trying to have some buying power to solve your running back situation in season, the second's going to be more applicable to the market than Elijah Moore. Also, not to mention, you're getting a lot of volatility potentially off your team. As much as we believe in the talent of Elijah Moore, maybe the first couple of weeks he's getting like 5 targets a game, getting him implemented to the system, and he gets off to a slow start. I feel like that second, if a team starts off 0-3, 0-4, and wants to sell a running back, they'd be more willing to do so, like I said, for that second rather than a guy like Elijah Moore, who would also be counterintuitive to their potential rebuild. So.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing, too, is you also then need to rely on them liking Elijah Moore, which not everybody will, right? The pick is universal. They're all going to want picks. If they're a bad team, they're going to want picks. Doesn't matter what the pick is, how good the draft class is, picks are beneficial to them. But Elijah Moore obviously would then depend on if they believe in Elijah Moore or not, which not everybody does. So we can move on to the last team of the video. We'll cut it off here at 7 just because we're going a little bit long. We have Brock Pac-10's team here. He said the league has been around since 2019 with some college hometown buddies. So he said it's pretty casual, which is definitely good to know. It's a 10-team PPR lineup league, 4 point per passing touchdown, 1 quarterback. So having Deshaun Watson, CJ Stroud is just fine there. Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, J.K. Dobbins, and Aaron Jones pretty strong at running back. Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Jerry Jeudy, Jahan Dotson, Jameson Williams, Tyler Lockett, and others at wide receiver. And then David Njoku, Dalton Kincaid, and Greg Dulcich at tight end, a pretty solid core there as well. So has all of his future picks by the looks of it. Doesn't have his own second, but he has somebody else's mid-second. My thoughts on this team is that it's pretty complete. I think he's strong at all positions. He's got depth at all positions. Maybe you want to make some moves to upgrade to some hammers at wide receiver specifically. I think that would make some sense if you can consolidate some assets. Maybe take Jerry Jeudy plus Jameson Williams and go after Chris Olave or something like that. Somebody that's a little bit more consolidated into one asset, because I do think in a start 8-10 team league, you don't really need the amount of depth that you have, and it would benefit you more to have more hammers at each position. But this is a young team that can probably compete.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like that, just judging off his first deal in particular, I feel like he's kind of, adapting to that mindset, because we do see in the first deal that he does make. I mean, I'll go through the team quickly first. Deshaun Watson, obviously, Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, J.K. Dobbins, Aaron Jones, Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Jerry Jeudy, Jahan Dotson. Like you kind of mentioned, a lot of strength in numbers. Would definitely try to keep consolidating it down. But speaking of consolidating, I love what you're able to do here, acquiring Garrett Wilson again in a start 8 format. 10-team league, single quarterback. You want guys with legitimate league-winning upside. And as much as I like DK Metcalf, as much as I like Javonte Williams, as much as I like, the first there, Garrett Wilson's the guy that has league-breaking upside here. Because if we're doing the math right now, Garrett Wilson, in my opinion, in this type of format, probably costs at least DK the 1 and the 2. Give or take?
Yeah, I would say, the late 2024 first, the mid second, and DK Metcalf is probably about fair for Garrett Wilson. And honestly, you could probably still talk me into Garrett Wilson's side on that
Agreed.
side of things.
And then when you're combining the rest of the package, Javonte and the 110, which was Michael Mayer, for Jahan Dotson, David Njoku in a third, I'd rather Jahan Dotson over Javonte Williams straight up. And I would slightly prefer Njoku to Mayer. But even if you want to call that a wash, I still think you got the preferable side on this deal.
Yeah, for sure. So keep consolidating these assets. I think you did a good job in this trade. He also sells the 201, which was Bryce Young. It is a 1 quarterback format, like we said, and Wan'Dale Robinson in exchange for the 108 and Dalton Kincaid. I would say in a 1 quarterback league, I think this is probably a fine move, although I do still love Bryce Young, and I think I would have preferred him. But knowing that you, in the next trade, you sell Chigakonkwo, presumably May 17th, this was before DeAndre Hopkins signed there. You sold him straight up for CJ Stroud. And even in a 1 quarterback format, I would much rather have CJ Stroud. And he's a good, perfect QB2 to go along with your Deshaun Watson. You get a young guy with some upside, doesn't really have, an ability to work into your lineup as long as Deshaun Watson's healthy, but you don't need him to. He just needs to be young and develop on your bench while Watson carries your team.
Yep. No, I fully agree. But overall, I mean, looking at this squad, would you try to potentially transfer CJ Stroud into a more competitive quarterback in this situation to have behind Deshaun? Or would you keep
No,
CJ Stroud?
honestly, I wouldn't. I would only do that if Watson were to go down for like a long-term injury and I needed somebody to help me compete right away.
What if you can get Dak?
If I could get Dak, I honestly still don't think I would do it. The other move that kind of stood out to me a little bit is the fact that this team is kind of like a house money team minus Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley's in a winning window. So if you get to this point in the season where you're like 2-4 at week 6, then you need to sell Saquon Barkley most likely, because
J.K. Dobbins.
He's not going to, be around very long. He's probably only got like a 1-2 year window projectable RB1 volume. So you don't want to be holding the bag on him when he starts to maybe look like he's getting older or whatever the case is. So for me, knowing that you have such a young wide receiver core, you have Bijan, who, even though he's a running back, he's the youngest running back in the league, and he's going to have value for the next couple of years. If this thing is going poorly for you in your first year, Saquon Barkley's the first guy that needs to go off your team, and you can sell him, probably straight up for like a first and a second. Like you said, this is a more casual league. You might even be able to get more than that for Saquon Barkley, because he's a big name. He's a guy that probably is putting up top 5, top 10 running back production. You might be able to get 2 firsts or a first and a young wide receiver or something like that.
Well, he does say that it does seem like to be a more redraft focused league. He saw Nick Chubb get dealt for 2 firsts in the middle of the 2022 season. So I definitely feel like if you get off to a slow start and you wanted to sell Saquon Barkley, 2 firsts has got to be your guideline, and you just literally have a precedent deal to point to. If somebody's like, well, I don't want to pay 2 firsts for Saquon Barkley, said, well, listen, like Nick Chubb went for 2 firsts in this exact same league in 2022, and I would argue that Saquon Barkley has a higher upside ceiling than what Nick Chubb presented in 2022.
Yeah, exactly. That makes total sense to me. He asked, like, should I go after like a hammer wide receiver, or maybe move off of one of his wide receivers? What are you more likely to do? Let me just put it this way. Are you more likely to wait and see and sell Saquon Barkley if it's not working out? Or are you more likely to be aggressive now and go after Cooper Kupp or Devontae Adams in a consolidation type of deal and hope that you're going to be able to compete with this team?
Honestly, I feel like there's no way you can compete with this team if I'm looking at it realistically. Like Deshaun Watson's going to be a needle mover at quarterback. David Njoku's going to be fine at tight end. Plus, you get the stack there, and you have a lot of options with Dalton Kincaid and Greg Dulcich as well. And although, like you said, maybe you can consolidate a couple of the wide receivers down into a true hammer, that would probably be the one move I would make. I don't see any way this team doesn't compete for at least a top 3 overall seed in your league. 10 team regardless, start 8 regardless. I feel like you're strong enough overall to be able to compete.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you consolidated Jahan Dotson, Jamison Williams together, maybe that gets you up to Devontae Smith, or maybe that gets you up to, T. Higgins or somebody like that. That could move the needle for you. In a start 8, you kind of need a better starting lineup, I would say, at wide receiver before you can truly compete. But having Bijan and Barkley is going to be huge needle movers at running back. Garrett Wilson's going to be a huge needle mover for you at wide receiver in your first spot. You probably just need one more guy there at wide receiver to be able to be fully competitive, because Watson and Njoku and those guys should be good enough for you at the other position. So you're in a good spot. I think you have some moves yet to make, but I think you're relatively in a good position. So if you guys enjoyed this video, if you made it to the end of it, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. If you guys are new around here, let Danny know how his new camera looks. We'd love to see that in the comment section. If you guys want access to our Dynasty rankings, rookie rankings, 2024 stuff, all of that is available on flockfantasy.com/FSE. And of course, by using our promo code, and you need to use our promo code to skip the line for Dynasty Decisions, you will be able to do so. And the next time we do a Dynasty Decisions episode, you'll be right on there, and we'll break down your team the way that we did for the teams in this video. So if that interests you, link down below in the description. And also, if you guys are playing redraft this year, which I'm assuming if you play Dynasty, you probably play redraft as well, definitely check out the deal that we have going right now. New users on Underdog Fantasy, sign up and deposit $10. You do have to deposit for it to go through, and you'll get our redraft rankings manifesto 2.0, which has all of our positional rankings, has all of our tiers, has all of our FSE versus consensus, where we see who's higher on, we're higher on than ADP, ECR, and all that stuff, and also the contextualized game logs, the Truth series that Danny's broken down a couple times on the channel. All of that's available, plus our weekly rankings in season for just a $10 deposit using promo code FSE on Underdog Fantasy. Once you use the promo code, we'll send you an email with all that information so that you can access those things. So if that interests you, link down below in the comment section, link down below in the description as well. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.